Okay, thank you and welcome for joining us for this lecture, which is part of our exhibition, 1972 Fischer Spassky, the match, its origin and influence. And this is one of our final events connected with that show. I invite you, if you're in the St. Louis area, to come visit it in its final weeks. We're lucky to have Grandmaster Varuzhan Akobian here to discuss some of Fischer's great games. Var earned his Grandmaster title at the age of 20. He was the U.S. Junior Champion in 2003, the winner of the World Open in 2002, 2004, and 2007, and helped the U.S. win the silver medal at the 2009 World Team Championship. Akobian is also a two-time USA Olympic bronze medalist and the runner-up at the 2014 U.S. Chess Championship. He's also a great friend of the museum, and we're lucky to have him here to examine some of these wonderful games. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for everyone being here. And I want to talk a little bit about from the time from 1969 to 1972 when Fischer dominated and won the qualifying tournament, the interzonal tournament, and went on to play 3 candidate matches where he defeated Mark Taimanov 6-0, then Bent Larsen with the same score 6-0, and then he won against Tigran Petrosian 6.5 to 2.5. So, and then at some point in this 3 years, he won 20 games in a row without any draws. So against a very, very top grandmasters. And interzonal tournament that he won to qualify for these matches, he scored 23 rounds. He scored 15 wins, 1 loss, and only 7 draws. That qualified him to the candidate matches. And as I mentioned, first he beat Mark Taimanov. And when he won the last game against him and made the score 6-0, Taimanov just shrugged his shoulders and said, "At least I have my music," because he was a musician. So, and then it was expected it was going to be a tough match against Bent Larsen, but again, Fischer was just too strong and dominant and won 6-0. And then after that, he faced Petrosian. Going into that match against Petrosian, he had 19 consecutive victories with interzonal in the 2 matches, and he won the first game of that match against Petrosian, going 20 in a row. And finally, in the game 2, Petrosian managed to win against him and stopped his streak. And they made 3 more draws. This is still 1979. And then Fischer won 4 games in a row, winning the match 6.5 to 2.5, and qualifying for the 1972 match to play Boris Spassky. The first game I prepared to show you, it's going to be the first time Fischer actually played against Mikhail Tal. And it's an incredible game where actually you'll see he will make a big queen sacrifice and win the game. So it's a really nice game from 1961. So this is the first win he had. So we'll start with this game, and if you have any questions, you can ask me in the meantime. So Fischer is playing with the white pieces against Tal. So he open up with e4, c5. So we have the Sicilian defense, knight f3, knight c6, d4, and here we have the Paulsen system of the Sicilian. And in the opening, you will see after there is one inaccuracy that Tal will make. I will show you here: g3, knight b5, queen b8. This is still normal, but here he plays the move knight e5, and this is a mistake. And one mistake after which he simply cannot recover the game because Fischer plays so precisely. Instead, he should have played a move here e5. Now white will play bishop g5, and important move is here a6, attacking the knight. Because if you make a slow move here, for example, like bishop e7, then after capture on f6, bishop captures, and then you have, for example, knight d6 check. Very strong, and now you have to move your king, cannot castle. So this a6 is pretty much the only move here to move this knight back to a3. But first bishop takes f6, pawn takes f6, knight has to go back on a3, and now bishop takes a3. And here white is still a little bit better, but it's going to be a long game, so it's not going to be easy to win the game. So, but this was absolutely necessary to play like this for Tal here. So instead, he played a move knight e5 in this position, and now Fischer played bishop e2. Bishop c5. Position is already very difficult. And now he plays bishop takes e5. It looks like a little bit of a strange decision to take the knight, give up the bishop. That is actually pinning to the queen, but actually he has a very concrete idea that he wants to do. So after take, queen takes, he plays f4. Now he's removing the queen from e5. Queen has only one square to go to, has to go all the way back to b8. No any squares he can go to. h5 is covered by the bishop, and now queen will go back to b8, and now e5. And here we see why it's so many problems black has now. He cannot go to d5 because you will capture. No good squares to go to for the knight, so he played a6. If you play knight g8, it's just going to be very, very passive. Knight e4, and this knight will land on d6. So it's a dominating position for white here. So there are a few more moves, but now knight d6. So it's a very, very big advantage here for white. So that's why Tal played the move here, a6. At least he wants to try to move this knight from here and try to complicate the position, because if he just plays simple, normal moves, he's already a very difficult position. Now, this gets a little bit interesting here. He takes the knight on f6, pawn takes b5, and now takes on g7, attacking the rook. And now rook g8 is the only move, knight e4. Now attacking the bishop and also threatening a very strong move, knight f6 check. So this pretty much forces the only move, bishop e8. And now another very nice move, queen d4. Developing the queen and also centralizing, and at some point also threatening knight f6 ideas. And again, very, very difficult position for black. White is already winning at this point. But now he plays the move rook a4, attacking the queen. Knight f6, captures, queen takes f6, and queen c7. And now he played the move long castle in this position, because the pawn on c2 is hanging. So there are other moves he can play, for example, just the move c3, but he wanted to castle, get the rook into the game immediately. And he's not worried about losing the pawn on a2. So he played rook takes a2, and now king b1, attacking the rook. And he played the move here, rook a6. Let's see. Yeah, rook a6. There is a line with queen a5. If you're wondering if you play queen a5, because now you're protecting the rook and threatening mate. And now white has a very nice move here, actually. He can play b4, attacking the queen and also protecting the a1 square. So rook a1 now will be met by queen takes a1. So if queen takes b4, just simply takes the rook on a2. So he plays queen a4, and now queen goes to c3, protecting the c2 square because queen c2 is threatening. So queen goes to c3, now protecting c2 and also attacking the bishop at the same time. King d8 is one of the options, and here we have an example of the position where black queen is actually overworked because it's protecting the pawn on b5 and the rook. So in a situation like this, if the piece is overworked, we have to try to find a way to deflect it. And here the winning move is bishop takes b5, attacking the queen. And now if queen takes the bishop, king will take the rook. And there's no more attack in this position. And it's winning. So that's why probably Tal didn't like this outcome here and decided not to play the move queen a5. By the way, also after the move queen a5, you can also play, for example, a move like b3 here. If you don't want to do the complications, you can play b3 and still probably a winning position for white here. And b3 will also just control the a1 square and protect it, so against rook a1. So he played rook a6. Now bishop takes b5, rook b6, bishop d3. Again, now bishop h7 is threatening, and really, really big advantage here for Fischer. So now black plays the move e5, hoping that with this move he can maybe force the queen takes e5 move, and after capture, f takes e5, rook g7. Still a very difficult position. Black is down a pawn, but it's still going to be a fight, and there are some chances, small chances to hold this position. At least it's an end game, just only 1 pawn advantage for white. But here is where Fischer actually decided that he's going to sacrifice his queen and just capture back with the pawn, allowing the move rook takes f6, and now takes back with the pawn. And this way now he's protecting the g7 pawn, and now threatening also bishop takes h7, and along with it he has a rook he1 check. So for a moment he's just down a rook for 2 pawns, but it's winning for him. So queen c5 plate, bishop h7, now queen g5. Black is trying to get rid of the f6 and g7 pawns. Bishop takes g8, queen takes f6. Rook hf1, attacking the queen. Queen takes g7, and bishop takes f7, winning on f7. King d8. And now another very nice move. He can try to just move the bishop and slowly try to push the pawns, but he decides to go for a nice move, bishop e6. Cannot take the bishop because of the pin. And now the threat is also to bring the rook now on f7. So the technique was just excellent. Position is winning, but still Fischer is playing all the best moves, very precise moves, just to win the game without giving any chances. Queen h6. And now bishop takes d7. Capturing back, and now bring the second rook now on the 7th rank and attacking on d7. Queen takes h2. And now we know that it's very important to have 2 rooks on a 7th rank, so that's why we capture with this rook. If you capture with this rook, then after king c8, the game will go on. There is no immediate way to checkmate, for example, because the king escapes. Technically still winning position, but you still have to work very hard to win it. But by playing rook df7, now the king is going to be caught on a back rank, and this is where you want the king to be when opponent king is on the 8th. So you always want it to be caught on the last rank, where you have 2 rooks and you can try to create mating chances. Now check, forcing the king to d8. He repeated it and then went back to d1. There are probably other ways to win as well, but now b5, rook b7, and now continuing to push the pawn, and now winning the 3rd pawn on b5. Rook, 2 rooks, and 3 passed pawns. Now rook on c6, and again, there are no really perpetual ideas. The 2 pawns are covering the king, so there's no way to give a perpetual here. And king h7. And here actually he resigned. The threat is now to play rook a7 check and push the king to the back rank. And he can also continue pushing the g-pawn or put 2 rooks on a 7th rank. For example, if here, just rook a7 check. So here you can play rook d6 to d7. And if it's just waiting, rook h7 check, king g8, queen g7, king f8, and pick up the queen here. Also you can try to go, with g6 here, but this is just good enough to win like this. So 2 rooks, very strong on the back rank. So this was a very good game, and I think this definitely inspired Fischer beating Tal for the first time in 1961. And basically, after just one mistake, if we go back in the opening when he made the move knight e5, right here. So yeah, he just played the move knight e5. If he plays e5, it's just a normal playable position, maybe a little bit better for white. But one mistake, and he just couldn't recover after that. So bishop e2, and this is a very nice idea, taking on e5 and f4, e5, and getting the winning advantage. So very, very nice game, and to beat such a great player like Tal, tactician player, and sacrifice a queen against him in the game. So this was really nice. Yes?
So how far do you think does he just see that this is good, or is he able to see some of the things that are going to happen later on, or are a lot of these moves forced?
Well, I think once he saw the opportunity here with the bishop takes e5, and then he's going to get this position, f45. He realized this is going to be a really big advantage for him because the knight doesn't have any squares to go to. You cannot go to h5, g4, this squares. And if you're going to put a knight on g8, it basically you came from g8 to f6, and now you're going back to the original square. So this is not very good because all the pieces are on the back rank. So you're definitely way behind in development. And here the pawn on e5 is very strong. And then you have the knight coming to e4 and knight d6. So I think once he saw this opportunity, basically the rest of the moves are just very easy for him to find. Any other questions about this game before we move on to the next? Okay, so we'll move on to the second game. And
Chad in the chat asked,
yes.
Fischer was pretty young. Do you know how old he was during that game?
1961? 17? 17. Around 17 years old, yeah. And yeah, so Tal was already very established, very strong player. So beating him at this age was very impressive. Let's move on to the next game that I prepared. And this game is actually from the World Championship. I really like this game. This is played in 1972, match game number 6 of the World Championship. And Fischer is playing with the white pieces. And this is a positional masterpiece, this game. So he starts out with c4. But it's the English opening, but it's going to transpose in the Queen's Gambit declined. Knight f3, d5. A very solid opening choice here by black. And so still a lot of theory here we're following. And well-known position. And rook c1. Queen a4, c5 is the main idea in this position. The reason you develop the queen here early because you want to be able to meet the move c5 with queen a3, which you will see in the game. It happened. So queen a4, c5, queen a3. This way you're pinning this pawn on c5 and making it difficult to play c4 or do anything else here. So rook c8, bishop b5. Developing bishop to the active square and controlling some of the important squares. And now, oftentimes you play bishop b5 here and forcing the move a6, and then you retreat on e2. Or you can even leave it right now because you cannot capture, black cannot capture here because you're going to lose the rook on a8. So he takes, castles, rook a7. Idea behind this move is to protect the queen. And also at the same time now you want to take the bishop on b5 because the rook is already protected. So essentially now you're forcing this bishop to go back. So bishop goes back here. And now he plays the move knight d7 actually. It looks like a very natural move, but I think it's the first inaccuracy of this game. Because this move actually allowing a very, very strong idea I think by Fischer here. So it was important here to anticipate what is white really trying to do after knight d7. So for example, I think queen f8 is the best move here to try to make sure this queen is not going to be hanging on e7. It's a very, it looks like a very small detail, but actually will make a big difference. You will see in few moves here. Queen f8 was important to play first and then play the move knight d7. Because right now the knight on f3 is a little bit passive, and you really need to activate this knight here to try to put some pressure on the pawns. So at some point maybe you need to play knight e1, knight d3, knight f4, which is going to take a long time, or knight d2, knight b3. Without the knight, it's going to be hard to put extra pressure on these pawns. So he played knight d7, and now this actually allows a very nice move here for white here. So what do you think he played in this position? Caleb? Knight d4, yes. Very good move, knight d4, and that's why I wanted this queen to be protected, because you cannot capture now. The queen is hanging. And now, after knight d4, you're going to be losing the Lysko bishop. It's very important, this bishop here. After capturing this bishop, white is going to be a little bit better at least. So now he played, there are several moves you can play here. I analyzed this position a little bit. So if you, queen f8, is the option, is what he played in the game. Another move is actually knight f6, which actually looked natural to play here. But then after knight takes e6, pawn takes e6, we see a lot of weaknesses in this position. Like, for example, a6 is weak. Now e6 pawn could be weak, and also c5 pawn. So, for example, white will play rook c2, then double up the rooks on the c file, and now pressure on c5. And the pawn on a6, you can't really move the rook away because you always have to worry about the a pawn hanging. So it's going to be a very pleasant position to play for white. Not a big advantage, but just a comfortable, small advantage. And at some point you can activate the light square bishop. Some of the light squares are weak as well in g6. So a little bit better here. But perhaps he could have played like this. Black could have played knight f6. Instead, queen f8 was played. And now, of course, the point of the move knight d4 is to capture on e6. So knight takes e6, takes back. And now another critical moment in this game. So I'll pause again and try give you a chance maybe to find a move here. How should white proceed in this position? Because, yes, we played knight d4, we captured on e6. But what should be the idea here to try to create more weaknesses? In particular, we want to try to create some light square weaknesses because we have the bishop. And we want to try to open the position because we have the bishop here.
What about bishop b5?
Bishop b5 back. Interesting move. Cannot capture, of course, because the a7 is still hanging. But I think he might just move the knight. And if we can't really take on a6 because if we do, then we're in danger of getting pinned here. So we need to do. We need a break in this position to try to get some more active squares for this bishop.
e4.
e4. Very good move. e4. Sacrificing the pawn, but if you capture this pawn, then I think the pawn structure is going to be really, really weak here. You see a lot of the pawns are very weak, and you're going to lose some of these pawns here. So this basically will simply crush black's center completely. This move. So to capture it's not very good. After queen e3, you will lose some of the pawns definitely here. e4 is a very good move, and here he played d4. I don't like this move so much for Spassky. I think this is a positional mistake because later on you will see white will get a really nice grip on the light squares here. Perhaps he could have played the move c4. I like this move better because now by playing c4 you're at least fighting for the light squares, and now you're trying to trade queens. So queen h3. White doesn't really want to exchange queens here because if you trade queens, king will take, and then can come to the center. It's going to be around equal. So but here queen h3, strong move, and it's a long range move, moving the queen from this side of the board to the other, and now immediately putting pressure on the weakness on e6. Knight c5, and now a very important move b4, trying to attack the knight. If the knight moves, then we can take on e6 with the check. For example, if you take knight e4, queen e6 check, you don't have queen f7 because the c8 rook will be hanging. So in this variation you lose the rook. So, and if you try to blockade with the rook, that is also not good because we have the move, for example, bishop to h5. Now we'll attack the rook, and another option is if king goes to h8, that will allow the move queen takes d5, picking up the pawn, and white will be up a pawn here. So after b4, black will take en passant, and now pawn takes b3. Now again threatening to play b4. Rook d8. And these are my analysis. I think with a perfect play, white is still a little bit better, but it's still a fight. I think this would have been the best way to continue after the move e4. White clearly is a little bit better because of the weaknesses on a6 and d5, but black has some chances here. In the game, he played the reaction against e4. I think was not that good. because after this move d4, and now again a very important move here. I think white needs to play here. It's very important to get the control of these squares here. So what do you think is the next move should be here for white to try to get the control of the weak squares here? Alex? Yeah. Bishop c4. Yeah, bishop c4 is a possibility, but yeah, he will probably play queen d6 or queen e7. And now if we play the move f4, there is going to be a little bit of difference here. There is a move knight b6, putting pressure on the bishop. So bishop c4 will still be there, but maybe it's better to start off with the move f4. Okay, now we control this square, and later on we can play the move bishop c4, and we would like to put the pawn on e5. This is very important to put the pawn on e5 because it will control the d6 square and also fix the weakness on e6. And now we're controlling a lot of the important squares in the center, d5, e5, f5, and we see a lot of weaknesses for black here. So queen e7 was played, and now e5, advancing the pawn. And again, this is a really good move. It's also restricting black's pieces from moving to f6. Now knight cannot go to f6, queen cannot go to, so it's also giving white a space advantage, because now by playing the move e5 you're entering to the black's territory and on the 5th rank, and it makes things very, very difficult now for black. Now he played the move rook b8. Perhaps would have been better to play the move knight b6 here to try to fight for the c4 square, not allowing the bishop to get to c4. Yes, Caleb?
Are there some tricks with f5 after knight b6?
f5. Let's see, and if he captures, queen b3 check. Queen b3, very nice, yeah. Queen b3 check, and we see a fork attacking the king and the pawn on b6. Yeah, f5 looks good, yes. I don't know if he can play, maybe he can try maybe this move c4, because black is dreaming here to get the queens off the board, because he sees that the attack is coming, it's going to be very strong. So even if he maybe loses one pawn but gets the queens off the board, at least he's not going to lose immediately, and maybe will have some drawing chances at the end. So I think something like this maybe would have give more chances, perhaps. I think white is still better, perhaps queen a5, but some chances to play, to have a counterplay, because if you don't play knight b6 in the game, you'll see basically black did not get any counterplay, and Fischer was able to just simply break through with the mating attack. But you need to get some counterplay. In general, when you get into positions like this in a real game where you are worse, you need to look for a counterplay. And I think the move knight b6 is exactly going to do that, because it's protecting the queen and allowing the move c4 to try to advance. So, but he played the move rook b8. It looks like an okay move too, because it's like activating the rook, putting some pressure here. But now bishop c4, activating the bishop, and now putting pressure on e6. He played king h8. Now, for example, I think I see a problem. If you play the move knight b6, I think now, yeah, there is a problem, I think, with this move, because now the b8 is not protected. So that is going to allow us to play which move? Queen b3, yes. Now we're pinning the knight and increasing the pressure on e6. And you don't have a good way to defend against this threat, because if you play king f7, that is going to run into a very, very strong f5. And then you will capture with the bishop or pawn, and rook will enter to the 7th rank, and it's just going to be game over. So you cannot take also on c4 here, because, again, putting the rook on b8, was a problem. Now it just takes with the check. So, and that's the reason why he had to play the move rook knight b6 in this position immediately. So now bishop c4, he played king h8. And now white to play again. What's the best move in this position? How should the white, it's clear that white has the advantage here, but how to continue? How to put some more pressure here?
Queen h3.
Excellent move. Yes, that's what he played. Wow, well done. Very nice move. It's a long-range move, moving the queen again from this side of the board to the other, but applying pressure. And this is exactly where you want your queen to be, because you are trying to attack here. You're not really interested to go to an endgame. You really want to try to win this game with a checkmate. So queen h3 is a very strong move and a hard move to find because it's a very long-range move. You're moving it from one side to the other side of the board, but immediately putting pressure on e6. So he played knight f8. Knight on f8 is a very good defender. But again, even in this position, you can't really defend this. You know, knight is an excellent defender on f8, but attack is just simply going to be too strong. So he played the move knight f8, and now the pawn is on b2 hanging. So we should not ignore that. If he had captured on b2 here, then I think we could take on e6. So that's why it was okay. But now after knight f8, the b2 pawn is hanging. So we need to figure out how to protect this pawn. b3, yes, that's the best way to do it, because you don't really want to have your piece defending the pawn in this position. So it's better just to advance the pawn, and that way you're also protecting your bishop, and you never have to worry about this pawn hanging. But if instead you try to defend it with the rook, like you play rook c2, then you have to worry about this pawn again hanging if you move the rook somewhere else. Also, your bishop is not going to be permanently protected. So that's the reason why you would want to play a move like b3 in general, and usually this kind of moves are always good because it's going to protect on c4 the bishop, and you never have to worry about this pawn hanging anymore. So now he played the move a5, and this is the moment now. I think we have, activated our queen, the bishop. How to break through here, through the defense here?
F5.
Yes, f5. We are trying to open up the position, and the rook on f1, and when the pawn reaches here, also another idea besides capturing on e6, we're also trying to play the move f6. Attack the queen and put pressure on g7. Very strong move and a very logical move to play in this position, because we have the queen and we want to open up the f file. E takes f5, and now how do we recapture here? We can capture with the queen, or we have some options here, but what's the best way to recapture? Rook, because if we capture with the rook, now we are also threatening the move rook f7 at some point. And that way also we can double up the rooks. So that's why it's better for us to capture with the rook, and then to play the move rook cf1 with rook f7 idea to put more pressure. Knight h7, rook cf1, doubling up the rooks. Now he plays queen d8. And again, it's not easy to see how to break through. For example, you still have to be careful. Like, for example, if you play the move rook f7, you will run into some problems like knight g5. So even in a very good position, you still have to be completely focused and still try to find the best plan. Otherwise, one mistake will let black into the game here. So this idea, it's not so easy, I think, to find, because again, we're trying to improve the pieces here. So which piece in particular you think Fischer should try to improve here? because our bishop is well placed, right? Rooks are pretty much where they need to be on an F file. Yes? Queen h5. So the piece that we need to improve is the queen. Okay, that's very important. Once we know that, then we have to look to see different ways to improve. Queen h5 is an interesting option. He didn't play queen h5, but queen h5, you are trying, Michael, to play queen g6, or yeah, it's an interesting idea. Queen h5, queen g6. He actually played a move queen g3 here. With a similar idea, he wants to go to g6 and rook e7. But now I really like this move also, because again, restricting opponent pieces and not allowing them to get active. And that's exactly what Fischer did in this game. And he did that very well here. So now, which piece we can try to restrict in this position? The knight, right? And how can we restrict him?
H4.
Absolutely, that's what he played. h4 now. Restricting, also giving your king an escape square. Most likely you're not going to need it, but it's always good to have that escape square to avoid, back rank checks or anything. So that's why I think this was important. And at some point, this could be very useful for you later on. Maybe you can advance to h5. But the main reason is you want to control the g5 right now. So h4, rook bb7. Black's position looks very awkward, but it's still hard to break through. There's no immediate way, like the 7th rank is well protected, the knight on h7 is guarding f8. It's not easy to find a pawn that is just going to win the game here. So let's see here how he did that, how he improved the position. Yes, Caleb?
You can think about
e6. E6, Yes, that's where he played. e6, advancing the pawn. And once we have a passed pawn and once we advance it, it's going to get stronger. And that's going to allow us to activate the rook. At some point now, after playing the move e6, we have options to play rook f7. And again, further the passed pawn goes, stronger it gets. Now, this is another idea. And after e6, he played rook bc7. And with every move now, Fischer is improving his pieces. Now, after e6, which piece now we can improve to a more active square here? Black is in a complete defense at the moment. All the pieces are in the back, just trying to survive at the moment. Queen e5. Very good move. Queen e5 again, centralizing the piece, especially the queen. If you remember in the previous game, we saw the move queen d4 by Fischer against Tal. Again, centralizing the queen. And that's something you should always try to do when you're playing, centralizing your queen. Because in the center, it's attacking so many different things, and it's really very well placed here, putting pressure on c5, now also putting pressure on g7. Very, very active here, the queen on e5. Queen e8. Again, Black is just trying to defend. And this move actually is specifically against the move rook f7, because if you play rook f7, he will capture. And if you capture with a rook, you are actually losing your queen. And you cannot even promote because the knight is doing a good job now defending this f8 square. Otherwise, you would promote and give a checkmate. But here it's not going to work. So that's why we don't have the rook f7. And I really like this move here, what he played, because this is going to be a hard move to find, but it's a really nice move by Fischer here. I'll give you a little bit of time to find this move because it's a very thematic move, like in this game. He did many ideas like this to control. Rook h5. Rook h5 with the idea to take on h6. Interesting move. Now threatening to take. Probably Rook h5. He didn't play rook h5, but it looks very interesting, this move, because now rook h6 is the threat. And yes, I have the move king g8, but now if the king goes on g8, that is going to allow the move rook f7, which previously we couldn't play, because now he can play here, and in case of capture, there is going to be a check, winning the queen. So rook h5, let's see. Perhaps he can play queen g6 maybe. Yeah, that's the only thing I see to defend against this threat. So perhaps queen g6 to try to defend against this threat. Yeah, so and if we play rook f7, that still allows the move queen f7 here. So yeah, if we play rook f7 now, then that has queen f7, and if capture, he will take. But this actually looks very good. This is winning with rook e8 now. Okay. So rook h5 looks very interesting move with a direct threat of rook h6. Perhaps it's a very good move as well. But he didn't want to change anything. He wanted to do a little bit more restriction. Restrict opponent pieces and put him in a complete sort of suksavang where there are no good moves to play. Caleb?
I like bishop d5 here.
Bishop d5, okay. With the idea of?
Take away the c6 square.
c6 square, Queen d6, okay. Yeah, this is another idea. Yeah, I mean, white's position is so good here. There are many different moves you can play here, and still you'll maintain the big advantage. Yes, Alex? Absolutely, a4, very nice move. I actually like this kind of move sometimes when I have a position like this. Not often you get a position like this where you have a complete control, and then it looks like you should be looking for a breakthrough, but instead you play a move like a4. Completely fixing the pawn on a5 and not allowing any counterplay or anything. And actually you pass the turn to the opponent, which sometimes is actually a very strong idea, because especially if they're in time trouble or anything, this is the move they're definitely not expecting. And when you play the move like a4, they have to do something. They have to think, what move should they play here? So, and it's also giving you a little bit extra ideas. Now you have the b5 square under control. So at some point you can also play the move bishop b5. So it's something that black needs to watch out. So I really like this move a4. And now he played the move queen d8. Now he played rook f1, f2. Just preparing the main idea, which you will see. Rook here. Again, black doesn't have too many options. Basically just going back and forth. And now it's time actually to go for the try to go for the concrete mating attack here. All the pieces are improved to the maximum here. The queen, the rooks, the pawn on e6. We have the pawn on h4. Everything we have, and we just need to figure out a way to proceed here with a strong attack. There is one piece that we can try to perhaps improve here. Yes?
Chad in the chat says bishop d3.
Bishop d3, that's correct. That's the best move here, because this piece is doing a good job on c4 here, but you can try to improve the bishop here and try to create a battery, diagonal battery here, and try to checkmate him on h7. So this is a very good move, bishop d3. And now the idea is queen e8. Again, black doesn't have too many options, just need to sit at the moment. And now the logical continuation of the bishop d3 is to play queen e4. Now we have the bishop and a queen on that diagonal, but we still have the rook in front of it. And now, if you take the pawn on e6, Now we have a very nice checkmate.
Rook F8.
Rook F8 check, correct. If he takes back with the queen, we have queen checkmate immediately. But what if he takes back with a knight? Because now he's still covering the h7 square.
Rook takes knight.
Rook takes knight, eliminating the defender. And now when he takes back, queen h7 checkmate. So now we see how he built up the attack and improved all the pieces and the queen on e4. Once the queen is already on e4, with the bishop d3, black actually cannot defend the position any longer here. So he played knight f6. And now it's, I think, pretty clear at this moment what we should do here, because the king is already getting really weak, and we need to try to weaken the king position even more. Alex? Rook takes f6, eliminating the knight. He takes back, and now luckily the rooks are actually defending the h7 square, so there is no immediate checkmate because the rook on e7 is guarding it. So he can do that. So he plays now rook takes f6. Now the king is really exposed, and the h6 pawn is hanging as well. So rook takes f6, king g8. And again, very nice move here. You know, perhaps there are other ways to continue, but I like this move just to make sure to keep the pieces restricted at all times.
Queen g4.
Queen g4 is a possibility, but that will allow the move rook g7. And then maybe some defensive ideas. What he's trying to do, he's trying to make a move that will discourage this rook from moving. Once this rook cannot move, then it's going to be easier to do the checkmate. So we need to make a move that will discourage the rook from e7 to move at all. Wait, rook f7. Wait, rook f7. But if he takes, pawn takes. Okay, if you take with the queen, then this is nice. Bishop c4, winning the queen and the game. You're also losing your queen if you take with the rook, because the queen is simply hanging here. But what if he takes back with the king? I don't see I don't see the immediate way to win. I mean, we have a check on h7. But king will go on f8, let's say, and if we take on c7, that's allowing check. There's bishop, so check and lose the bishop. So again, giving some chances to block. So it's better not to allow any chances here. Caleb.
Bishop c4.
Bishop c4, back to the original square, where the bishop was there for a very long time. And the reason this move is very strong now, every time you move this rook, you're just simply going to lose immediately to the move e7 check. For example, if you move the rook, e7 check. You go back, rook f8 check. So once this pawn reaches the 7th rank, the bishop opens up, it's going to be rook f8 immediately. So that way the rooks are going to be very ineffective here defending on a 7th rank after the bishop on c4. It's just restricting both rooks here. So bishop c4, and now he played the move king h8, and the last move of this game, after the precise move, black resigned here. So, actually played the move. So we can take on h6, of course, but it's better to play which move? To create more threats to the king. Queen e5. Queen e5. Probably it's still very good to move queen e5, threatening rook h6 now. Yeah, I think this is also very strong. He actually played the move queen to f4. The idea now threatening, the first idea is threatening rook f8, just simply winning the queen, and also attacking the h6 pawn. So, and here actually Spassky just resigned after move queen f4 because he realized there is no way he can try to defend against all these threats. So, for example, king to g8, queen takes h6, and once again we see he can never really move this rook to do any kind of defense, because if he does that, we're going to play e7 check, opening up the diagonal. He goes to h8 and then rook f8.
Could he have played h7 instead of king to g8?
Here?
Yeah.
Yeah, but then that allows the main threat now. You're not stopping the main threat.
Yes.
The main threat is to play rook f8 check.
Right.
And now takes
Yes.
and checkmate. So again, yeah, at the moment the king is just simply too weak, and he resigned here in this position. And Fischer won the match with a 12.5, 8.5 score. I think this was very important. Again, it was a very difficult start for him. He lost the game and then forfeit, so it was very difficult. 0-2, and he managed to turn it around in a game 3. And then this was, I think, a very important confidence boost to win a game like this, where you just simply control your opponent and just improve. And he didn't allow any ideas. If you see in a late middle game here, basically all Spassky can do here, his pieces were just now moving. The rooks were just simply stuck, and he was just moving the queen back and forth, because he couldn't do anything. Any other active move he makes, it will make his position worse. So it just shows how well he played here in this game, and got a really, really nice advantage here. So, and Fischer went on to continue winning more games, and at the end winning the match 12.5 to 8.5 to become the only American world champion so far. So it was a very, very dominating, from 69 to 72. I mean, his play was absolutely amazing. Starting from the interzonal tournament that he won in Spain, and the 3 candidate matches, going 20 in a row against the very best players, 20 in a row with no draws.
How long a period of time was that over those 20 games?
Well, it was the interzonal.
Like a year and a half.
Yeah, it's an interzonal tournament where he won in Spain. Interzonal he won, and then he played 6 games with Taimanov.
And those matches were months
Yeah.
apart, right?
Yeah, in 1971. Yeah, he played in
So he was
1971.
down for like a year and a half.
Year and a half, yes. Year and a half. 6-0 against Taimanov, 6-0 against Bent Larsen, then won the first game against Petrosian to go 20 in a row. And it's a second longest streak. Steinitz had a little bit longer streak of 25 game wins, but again, the competition he faced were not the competition that Fischer faced, because he faced the very best.
About best ever, right? Is it
Absolutely.
How many years, or is it how much domination over a
It's
relatively significant time?
Yeah, there are people who won a lot of games in a row, but again, you have to see the competition they played. But he played like at that time the top guys, because they were also playing really well and qualifying. Bent Larsen was very high-ranked player, top 3 at that point. Taimanov qualified. So these are the guys who were doing really, really well at that particular moment. So by beating them 6-0, it's just absolutely incredible. And then Petrosian was very tough player. He was exactly at his prime at that time, Petrosian. But still, he managed to win the first game. Then Petrosian slowed him down, couple of draws, and then 4 in a row to clinch the World Championship match.
Do you happen to know the ratings of either Taimanov or Larsen at that time?
No, I don't know the exact ratings, but the Fischer rating was close to 2,800.
Yeah.
Close to 2,800 at that time. And keep in mind, at that time there weren't as many high-ranked players.
No,
So
they're all
you
26, 50s,
yeah, exactly. He
26,
was
40s.
Yeah, it's not like nowadays where you have a lot more high-ranked players, a lot more tournaments where you can try to go and play against a lot of 27, 50 players. So Fischer's rating at that time, it was just absolutely incredible, because he just kept winning. He didn't even draw. So, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.